If you want all of your data in one place, you need the Intuit ERP. I'm Damon John, and I run my growing business on Intuit Enterprise Suite. Learn more at intuit.com/ERP.
And we're live on match day as Doug reaches for a buffalo wing. He's got it! Oh, and he's gone for a can of Pepsi too! What a finish! There's no doubt about it. It just tastes better. Match days deserve Pepsi.
Ouch. This knee is killing me, but I can't stop training. The marathon is in 2 weeks.
Let's get on ZocDoc and find a doctor to take a look at that for you.
Okay.
Here's a review. Dr. Craddock really takes his time.
No, I don't have time.
What about Dr. Charles? His patients say he can help find a quick fix, and he's in network.
Great, now we're talking. Book it.
Booked. 1 mile down, 19 to go.
Bring it on.
You've got options. Download the ZocDoc app today.
Welcome to the Murder Diaries. I'm Natalie.
And I'm Paige. Heads up for our listeners. We are now posting, by the way, full-length video episodes of docu-files on YouTube. So make sure you head over to YouTube at the Murder Diaries podcast and check us out there too.
In October of 2021, 38-year-old Heidi Planck was exactly where she was supposed to be, cheering on her young son at his football game on a Saturday afternoon. She was a successful finance professional, a devoted mother, and, by all accounts, someone with plans for the future. But sometime after leaving that field, Heidi seemingly vanished without a trace. At first, it looked like the kind of missing person case investigators see every year. And then the details began to stack up. The location services on Heidi's phone had been disabled. Her devices suddenly went silent. Friends and family reported behavior that didn't seem like her. And then came the discovery that transformed an already baffling disappearance into one of LA's most confounding mysteries. Just days after Heidi vanished, her beloved dog Seven was found wandering alone on the 28th floor of a luxury downtown L.A. high-rise, a building where Heidi didn't live and had no obvious reason to be. So, how did the dog get there? Had Heidi been there too? Or was this the key to understanding what happened after she left her son's football game? Nearly 5 years later, Heidi Planck has never been found. Her disappearance remains one of Southern California's most perplexing unsolved mysteries, leaving behind more questions than answers, and a son still searching for the truth. This is her story.
Used to think it's in my head, but I'm walking with the dead.
At the time of her disappearance, Heidi Planck was 38 years old, a finance executive, devoted mother, and someone who had built a successful career in Los Angeles. She had worked at Camden Capital Partners since 2016, while sharing custody of her 10-year-old son, Bond, with her ex-husband, Jim Wynne. To the people who knew her best, Heidi had a magnetic presence. Her longtime best friend, Natalie John, described the blonde, blue-eyed mother as a bright light who left an impression on everyone she met. From the instant I met her, she had an intoxicating smile, Natalie later recalled. We were two girls in Los Angeles at the time with just a few friends, and so we really connected. Natalie John admired Heidi's discipline as much as her warmth. Mornings typically started with a workout before heading into the office. And no matter what challenges the day brought, Heidi kept moving forward. That's one of the things I really admired about her, Natalie John said. She motivated me within myself to get up and work out and go to work. It didn't matter what her day was, she was always working. But if Heidi was driven professionally, Natalie John said she took a much more easygoing approach at home. Everything revolved around Bond. That was her boy. And she was his best friend, Natalie John said. Her ex-husband, Jim Wynne, shared that view, describing Heidi as a loving mother. But he also believed she had struggled for years with postpartum depression after Bond was born in 2011, something he felt never fully resolved. I think the postpartum either took over or was in full blossom, Jim said. I don't think she ever recovered from it. He recalled moments that reflected the intensity of those struggles, like waking up in the middle of the night to find Heidi obsessively scrubbing the floors, even though they employed a full-time nanny who handled the cleaning. I'd hear something at 2 a.m, Jim remembered. I'd go out and she'd be scrubbing the floor. She would get a little crazy with making sure everything was done. It was really way overboard. Natalie John also believed Heidi never gave herself the time she needed to recover after giving birth. Heidi didn't take the time to heal, she said. She had postpartum. She didn't realize she had it. And I don't think she took time off to take care of her body. She went right back to work. But those who loved Heidi also remember the parts of her personality that had nothing to do with her struggles. She had a playful side and a lifelong fascination with one of pop culture's most iconic fictional characters. Heidi's love of James Bond even found its way into her family life. A devoted fan of the famous 007 spy, she named her son Bond. And her beloved dog Seven was no coincidence either. Although Heidi and Jim had been divorced for 9 years, they had remained on good terms, continuing to co-parent Bond together. Despite the end of their marriage, they were united by the person they both loved most, their son.
On Sunday, October 17th, 2021, Heidi attended her son's football game. Jim said that during that time she'd been under stress. She appeared agitated before she abruptly left that game and vanished for good. Witnesses at the game saw her getting into her gray Range Rover with her dog Seven and then driving away. It was discovered later that her GPS, Apple Watch, laptop, iPhone, all their location services had been disabled. She was later seen on surveillance video walking Seven at the Hope and Flower luxury high-rise building in downtown L.A. That building was later linked to an illegal poker room. Law enforcement sources suggested that she may have met associates and was perhaps connected to that poker operation that day, but that theory hasn't necessarily panned out and obviously didn't back then either. Because Heidi and Jim shared custody of their son Bond, school pickups and drop-offs changed intermittently. Sometimes Jim would do it and other times Heidi did it. On the cool, clear afternoon of Wednesday, October 20th, 2021, it was Heidi's turn to pick up Bond from school. But that day, Jim felt like something was off. He remembers talking to his son the night before on Tuesday night. He told NBC, "I talked to him on Tuesday night and I said, 'Did you not talk to your mom last night?' His son said that he hadn't, but that he texted her and hadn't heard back from her. Jim then tried texting Heidi himself and he also got no reply. Quote, "I would always get some type of response. So I'm on alert, but I'm not on high alert yet," referring to how he felt at that time. On that Wednesday afternoon, October 20th, he was still concerned about not having heard from Heidi for the last 2 days. So he called Bond's school to ask when Heidi came by to pick up his son that they not release him until Jim got there so she could tell him what's been going on. He later said, "I thought it would be a good idea if she explained herself. Why hadn't she spoken to Bond since the football game? Pickup time was at 2:45, so I was there." But Heidi never showed. Natalie, who is Bond's godmother, later said that there was no way Heidi would ever miss a pickup. She said that Bond was everything to her. She went on to say he was the only unconditional love that she had. Jim could read Heidi really well, despite nearly a decade of being divorced. To him, Heidi seemed antsy at Bond's football game. He said she was a little frantic. "I see her on the opposite side of the field, and then I saw her walking up the stands, and then I see her back down on the field." It didn't coincide with where they were playing the football game on the field. And then all of a sudden, it was halftime, and she said, "I gotta go." And I thought to myself, where the hell are you going on a Sunday? What do you have to do? And she left. Now, Natalie says that Heidi often ran errands for her boss at a moment's notice, which this could have been a possibility on that Sunday evening. But also, Heidi wasn't the same homebody she'd been when she and Jim had been married and when Bond was even younger. Post-divorce, it seemed like to Jim that Heidi was always actually in motion. She was always doing something, he said. She was in Hawaii, she was in Cabo, she was doing this, she was doing that. She was going to San Diego, she was going down to Orange County. Heidi was clearly really on the move.
When Heidi failed to pick up Bond from school that Monday afternoon, Jim Wynne knew something was terribly wrong. Like I mentioned earlier, the two had been divorced for nearly a decade, but they remained committed co-parents, and Heidi had never simply disappeared. Jim immediately filed a missing persons report with the Los Angeles Police Department and began thinking through every possible way investigators might be able to locate her. His mind went first to Heidi's car. "We knew she had a Range Rover," Jim recalled. Range Rover is going to have GPS. He passed this information along to detectives, hoping the vehicle's location would lead them straight to Heidi. Instead, investigators learned the GPS feature had never been activated. Jim wondered whether that meant someone had intentionally disabled it, but detectives wouldn't speculate. "We can't tell you that," they said. "We can only tell you that it wasn't turned on." Then another troubling detail emerged. Jim asked police to track Heidi's iPhone and Apple Watch, but neither device had location services enabled. Even the company laptop she used for work reportedly couldn't be tracked. To Jim, the pattern was difficult to ignore. Every device capable of revealing Heidi's whereabouts had gone dark. Her car, her phone, her watch, her laptop. Natalie John found that just as unsettling. "It was really strange that her GPS didn't work," she later told NBC. "Her Apple Watch. She had an Apple Watch on. It was really strange that the location wasn't working. Really strange and really worrisome." With technology providing no answers, Jim turned his attention to someone else who may have been with Heidi that weekend. Her beloved dog, Seven. "I thought, wait a minute, maybe the dog's chipped," Jim remembered. He contacted Heidi's vet and learned that Seven had in fact been microchipped. Jim immediately called the microchip company, asking that his own phone number be added to the dog's contact information in case anyone found him. Then the representative stopped him. Seven had already been found. Jim assumed the dog had turned up somewhere familiar, near Heidi's home or close to Bond's football game, the last place anyone knew Heidi had been. Instead, Seven had been discovered wandering alone through the hallway of the 28th floor of a luxury residential high-rise in downtown Los Angeles, roughly 12 miles from the football field. It was the first tangible clue in Heidi's disappearance, and it only deepened the mystery. Investigators now had to determine not only where Heidi had gone, but how her dog had somehow ended up inside a secure downtown high-rise with no obvious connection to her. One possible explanation centered on Heidi's job. Since joining Camden Capital Partners in 2016, Heidi had become an indispensable employee. According to Natalie, she was constantly working. She went above and beyond. Her phone was ringing 24/7. She was her boss's right hand. She was doing everything for him. Natalie believed Heidi's responsibilities stretched well beyond those of an executive assistant. She was basically the controller, she said. She handled all his taxes, all the LLCs, everything financially that came in. But Jim viewed Heidi's role differently. She was named by the media being a controller, he said. Not to be disparaging, but she wasn't a controller. There's no possible way she could be a controller of a company. That's a big job. She was never trained to do that. You'd have to have significant schooling for that and experience. Regardless of her official title, Jim said Heidi had become increasingly anxious about work in the months leading up to her disappearance. She was extremely worried and scared that she had so much on her plate at work, he told NBC. She was extremely worried about her name on the dotted line for the person of service of process with the IRS. At the time, Camden Capital Partners was potentially implicated in an SEC civil case alleging a fraud scheme involving tens of millions of dollars. Jim believed Heidi's concerns may have stemmed from her name appearing on official company documents connected to the government inquiry. Shortly after Heidi disappeared, investigators searched her home and recovered at least one company laptop. Jim later said Heidi's employer was eager to retrieve company property from the house. The laptop itself would become part of legal proceedings related to the SEC investigation, with Heidi's boss arguing that investigators should have obtained a warrant before seizing it. The timing inevitably fueled public speculation. A key employee connected to a company facing federal scrutiny had vanished without a trace. But speculation isn't evidence. To date, investigators have publicly identified no evidence that anyone at Camden Capital Partners was involved in Heidi Planck's disappearance. Likewise, there's no public record indicating Heidi had been called as a witness by either the FBI or the SEC before she vanished.
Now, there's another part of the story that provides some critical clues and greater implications about what might have happened to Heidi. It has to do with where her dog was found, the Hope and Flower high-rise building in downtown L.A., which was also where she was observed on surveillance camera, if you remember. This high-rise is part of LA's newly revitalized downtown district. It's a complex that includes 2 skyscrapers, sweeping views, and swimming pools. It, by all means, was not some seedy building in a bad part of town. It was within only a few blocks of LA's ultra-chic Ritz-Carlton as well. As soon as he was informed, Jim headed down to retrieve Seven from a married couple who had found him wandering on their floor. They mentioned something interesting to Jim when he was there, too. They said that the building was outfitted with multiple layers of security. The husband went on to tell Jim, just so you know, you have to use a key card to get into this place. Then you have to get by security. And then you have to go through double doors with a key card. Then, when you get on an elevator, you have to use your key card to access your specific floor. So by all means, it was very odd that Heidi would have had access to this building and that Seven would have wound up on their floor. It's got to be an indicator of something, right? I'm not alone in thinking that. The building's high-tech security became central to the investigation of Heidi's disappearance. Who would have allowed Heidi and her dog into that building? And who could have brought her or summoned her to a particular place like that? Detectives weren't the only ones scoping out the Hope and Flower building. Heidi's friends soon got access and started knocking on doors and handing out flyers. These friends also spoke to the media, and they were actually able to cut through the bureaucratic fog that often surrounds the beginning of a missing persons case. A reporter, Eric Leonard of KMBC, said, because Heidi's case was one of the dozens, if not hundreds, of missing persons reports that come into the police department each week, it really wasn't until her friends began shaking the trees a little and cold calling newsrooms that got us interested in finding out what happened to her. This is how Heidi's case became big news in LA.
Natalie took a shot with local businesses, asking them if she could review their security video from the day that Seven was found. And just like that, there was Heidi on video. They found this video clip that I believed was recorded from a drugstore, Eric Leonard said. It shows her walking down this particular alley that is right next to the apartment building where the dog was found. In the video, you see her and you see the dog, and there's a timestamp. The video was recorded at 6:22 p.m., and in the video, petite Heidi is wearing the same jeans and t-shirt she had on at Bond's football game. Most importantly, Heidi doesn't seem alarmed or stressed in the least. She's not running from anything or anyone. She's very casual seeming and unperturbed. Police were able to recover other security videos from inside Hope and Flower, videos that showed Heidi. The footage showed other people as well, and that digital footage, combined with other security data, provided critical information about who, out of hundreds and hundreds of residents there, might have been in contact with Heidi. Based on all of this information, investigators began to believe that Heidi had gone to the Hope and Flower building to attend some sort of gathering.
Again, sharing what Eric from KMBC said, leveraging data they got from the building, which included profiles of the people who lived there, visitor logs, all those kinds of things, it was clear where Heidi had gone. He went on to say that pretty early on, there was a recognition that there were a lot of people, a number of people, to question. So obviously it was in question if Heidi had maybe attended a party or something in the building, but Natalie contradicts this, saying, that's not the Heidi I know. If she was going to something, a gathering, or if she was invited to some social event, Heidi would go home and change and leave the dog at home. And this is exactly what Natalie is questioning. Why would she take Seven to the party? Eric Leonard says that the LAPD homicides, however, though, were starting to believe that not only was there a party at the Hope and Flower building, but that it may have also involved drugs. Now, that theory, by the way, doesn't come as a shock to a former resident of the building. Her name's Jennifer, and she spoke to NBC. She asked to not have her last name included, so we won't include it either. However, she had been living at the Hope and Flower building for almost a year by mid-October of 2021 when Heidi went missing. She said she never personally saw Heidi, but she definitely saw other tenants and said that they were, quote, of a type. The people there were hip and trendy, driving their fancy cars, this Jennifer says. You know, a younger, hipper, Instagram-worthy crowd. So to me, what I'm picturing, you guys, is influencers and up-and-comers. Jennifer would actually go on to speak further about the party scene at this building. She said it wasn't out of the ordinary to smell the pungent odor of weed. She says that it was constantly, oh yeah, all the time. I smelled it. There were weed parties a lot. You're like, oh my God, what's going on? I did not feel safe. Needless to say, Jennifer suspected that weed may have just been the tip of the iceberg at these parties. Detectives were feeling the same way. And after talking to numerous people in the building, investigators were working up the theory that some kind of dangerous and illegal drug scene could have played a central role into what happened to Heidi.
One of the things police began to hear from people who had attended that gathering was that Heidi had been there and something terrible had happened to her. There was a pretty clear understanding amongst investigators that she had attended this party or gathering and went into distress. She had some kind of medical episode, said Leonard. And for one reason or another, nobody called 911 for help. And she died. For Heidi, it would be an unthinkably tragic fate. Being in a place where illegal drugs were being used, overdosing on one or more substances, and then being at the mercy of others who might not want the police to be involved. So a call for help was simply not made. Investigators thought that Heidi may have taken what she thought was one particular drug, but in fact ingested something laced with a lethal amount of fentanyl, the powerful synthetic opioid that drug dealers sometimes mixed with other drugs. All of this, of course, was only a theory that investigators developed after talking with people they believed who had been at the party. The only way they would know for sure would require an autopsy, and that required finding Heidi. Eric Leonard surmises that police were able to find some kind of DNA in or around the building's trash chute. They were able to confirm that after she died, she was likely put into an upper floor trash chute, Leonard said, and her body fell into a giant industrial-sized dumpster and trash compactor on the ground floor of the building. They may have found something that confirmed their belief that this happened. This theory would explain why Heidi is seen arriving at Hope and Flower, but never leaving the building. But the police were one or more steps behind on this particular theory. Because by the time they came to the trash chute conclusion, the building's dumpsters filled with trash had been collected several times and taken to a landfill outside of L.A. Police thought they'd caught a break when they learned that the dumpsters were tracked by GPS by the company that owned them. And what's more, the places that the dumpsters were taken to were plotted and marked by the company that runs the landfill. So investigators had a pretty clear understanding about where the trash was taken when it left the building. So they looked, they dug, but they couldn't find Heidi.
And to add insult to injury, it began to rain, and quite a lot for Los Angeles standards. The search was suspended, and it was time for police to let Jim know what they thought happened to his ex-wife. Jim explains that the detectives had me come downtown. They sat me down with 4 detectives and the chief of the homicide division, and they said, "We just want to let you know we do not think that Heidi is alive." This was difficult to hear for Jim, but the idea of Heidi and drugs wasn't impossible for him to believe. He told NBC, "I do know for sure that she was an Adderall user." In fact, Jim wasn't wrong. Heidi had multiple prescriptions for Adderall that she got through a practice known as doctor shopping. With doctor shopping, you're able to get one prescription through your insurance and the rest you can pay for in cash because they're not going through a database that would red flag you, so to speak. Natalie, on the other hand, contradicts this to a certain extent. She says that she never saw Heidi use drugs. The only thing she saw was Adderall, but she expresses that she'd been using Adderall for ages, but never abused it.
So the question remains to this day. What happened to Heidi Planck? Where is she? If she's no longer alive, what happened to her remains? How is it that the loving mom and the big James Bond fan seemed to find some real-life danger on what seemed like an ordinary afternoon? For her friend Natalie, waiting for answers about what happened to Heidi is agonizing. Every minute, every second that passes, I wonder if there's still hope, she said. And I hope there's hope. But for me, I'm afraid it's going away bit by bit. For now, Heidi's story, as most missing persons cases are, is about the pain and mystery that is left behind for the people who loved her most. I literally can hear her voice in the middle of the night, says Natalie. and I'll get up and just chills are running down my body, and I can't go back to sleep. There's a little boy that's waiting. He just wants to know what's going on with his mom. And there's also a father struggling to help his boy make sense of something no family should ever go through. I tell him exactly the truth, says Jim Wynne. We don't know. And when we do, I'll make sure he's the first one to know. It's a very difficult conversation, but I thought being honest was the best way to be. I've told the truth. I'm trying. As it stands now, Heidi's family are waiting on new leads in anything from the public. So if you know something about Heidi's disappearance, please call the LAPD at 213-486-6840. There's also an anonymous tip line, the Los Angeles Regional Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-TIPS. That's 8477. You can also go online at lacrimestoppers.org.
Make sure to follow us on all of our socials and subscribe on YouTube at the Murder Diaries pod or podcast. Make sure to tune back in on Monday for our Tragic Hollywood segment, Tuesday for our DocuFile segment, and we'll be back Thursday with another true crime case that needs your attention. Until then,
Stay safe.
bye.